Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And the most important that by the beginning of the 18th of November we got lots of information, lots of details and updates regarding Russian massive missile strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine. And according to the information we have, the Russians mainly were trying to destroy the Ukrainian facilities, energy facilities, the Ukrainian substations, the Ukrainian supply and support roads that the Ukrainians are using to support their forces in the eastern part of Ukraine. So if you take a look at the map, you're gonna see the significant number of icons with missile, and every single icon means the target that the Russians damaged or destroyed. And if we zoom in better, we will see that almost every single icon confirm Russian attack, either on some power plant like Zaporizhzhia power plant in the western part of Ukraine, or some substation. When talking about substations, we're talking, for example, the city of Kovel, or any other object of energy facilities. Also, we start receiving a lot of updates about the current blackout in Ukraine. For example, it's confirmed that metrics show a significant decline in internet connectivity in Ukraine, in Odessa and Ukraine, as authorities impose emergency power shutdowns after Russia targeted energy infrastructure overnight. And we have, of course, the picture of Odessa itself during the night period of time. We have, as you can see, we have the completely darkness. Odessa went into complete darkness, and the sources are saying that it's very difficult to understand when exactly the Ukrainians will be able to restore everything. Furthermore, we have videos from Kryvyi Rog, fresh videos that shows the consequences of Russian attack, some smoke as a result after Russians destroyed another substation or power plant. And of course, we have lots of videos from the area of Kremenchuk. There is a Kremenchuk power plant, and we have video that show us the process of how the Russians were attacking the dam of Kremenchuk power plant. This is one video. This is a video of the same power plant, but from another angle. As you can see, the Russians, to destroy the Kremenchuk dam, used at least 3 or 4 missiles at least. And the sources are saying that the dam wasn't destroyed, just damaged. But anyway, this is just the first wave of attacks. Most likely the Russians are planning to continue. Obviously, this is the huge escalation, and most likely there was some negotiation process between the president of Ukraine Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, president of Russian Federation, and probably some Middle East countries were in between them, trying to let's say find agreements and negotiations how not to attack each other and how not to attack the energy facilities. But after Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, called Putin, I see that the Russians decided to decline any negotiations, and they began bombing and attacking Ukraine. And now we have reports that all Ukraine regions will experience temporary restrictions on power consumption on Monday following Russia's massive airstrike on the country's energy system. Furthermore, we have reports that the Ukrainian energy office warned of a blackout after the morning strikes of the Russian armed forces on energy facilities. Winter in Ukraine promises to be difficult. Furthermore, we have report that Ukrainians were forced to shut down 7 of its 9 operating nuclear reactors after a massive overnight attack by Russian missile and drones. And the most important, that after these attacks, the Western countries, when I'm talking about, for example, the United States of America, began lifting any restrictions to attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. The US authorization for the use of long-range weapons against Russia is unlikely to fully meet Kiev's demands, Bloomberg reports, citing sources. According to the sources, the weapons could be deployed in the Kursk region, but all details surrounding the Biden administration decision remain classified. For example, we have first, we have report also by some French papers, Le Figaro, that France and Britain also allowed Ukraine to strike deep into Russia with their Scalp Storm Shadow missiles, but later they removed this post from their paper. Furthermore, Zelensky is, of course, he's in panic, and he probably forced the Western countries to lift restrictions. And as we discussed, Biden has authorized the Ukrainian armed forces to use short-range attack missiles with a range of 50 miles just in the Kursk region. And later, military experts reported that most likely the Ukrainians are planning to use them just against the Russians and North Korean forces. But telling the truth, I'm not sure that this is going to happen and this is going to help Ukraine. Furthermore, Zelensky announced that this week he's going to unveil a 10-point resilience plan next week, this week, in an attempt to boost Ukraine morale, which has been dented by Trump's election victory. Now let's go to the Kursk direction. We still haven't seen even a single North Korean soldier on the ground, but we received very interesting post that was published by the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. The Russians are saying during the successful action of the Northern Group of Forces of the Armed Forces of Russian Federation to defeat Ukrainian formations in the territory of the Kursk region, units of the Armed Forces of Ukraine were blocked in the area of the Olgovsky forest. So we're talking about this part. We keep this area under yellow color, which confirms that there are still Ukrainian soldiers, and the Russians are saying that they began attacking and clearing this territory. The Ukrainians during the previous night made an attempt to break through the encirclement, but they were destroyed. A lot of soldiers were destroyed, and just 24 Ukrainian soldiers were taken as prisoners of war. And later we got the video, at least the sources are saying that this is exactly from this territory. We can see the significant number of Ukrainian soldiers that were building some formations for evacuation of the breakthrough, and the Russians were attacking and bombing them with a significant number of drones. Most likely the Ukrainians will not be able to escape this encirclement, and then most likely they would be destroyed. And during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received any update regarding any changes on the ground. Now let's move to the Zaporizhzhia direction, because during the previous night we also started receiving a lot of reports from this territory. First, the Russian sources published the video how they managed to discover the redeployment of Ukrainian HIMARS systems. 2 or 3 systems were redeploying from one base to another most likely, and the Russians destroyed the entire convoy with the Lancet drones. And furthermore, we start receiving updates about Novodanilovka and Orekhiv direction itself. The Russian sources are saying that the movement towards the settlement of Novoandreevka from the settlement of Nesteryanka began. Also, Russian troops began an offensive north of the settlement of Rabotina towards the settlement of Mala-Takmachka. So the Russians start offensive operation. Currently, it's very difficult to understand what are their main goals and what are they going to do, what are their main tasks. But we start receiving some changes on the ground according to different mappers. According to neutral mappers, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions and to take these 3 lines in the southeastern part of Mala-Takmachka. We were talking a lot about this Mala-Takmachka, and the main primary target for the Russians, of course, is to take under control this former prison, as these Ukrainians are using this prison as the citadel. If the Russians are able to take prison under control, then this is going to be a perfect foothold before further advancing further in the northern directions towards the city of Orekhiv itself. Now let's talk about the South Donetsk direction, where we can see very heavy clashes for the stronghold in the area of the village of Uspenovka. And as you can see, the Russians managed to improve their positions from 3 sides. The Russians improved their positions in the direction of the village or small construction by the name of Giganta Konstantinopolska. The Russians indeed managed to answer the village of Trudovo from the south, and the Russians managed to improve their positions in the village of Dalne and to take the settlement under complete control. So the Russians are attacking from 3 directions. Let's take a look at the geolocations. In this video we can see how the Russians first were bombing and attacking the southern part of Trudovo with drones and artillery, and after that the Russians began assault operation with personal carrier. The Russians entered the territory of the settlement, and the most important, the Russians raised the flag in the most southern part of the village by the name of Trudovo. So this is the flag, and based on this video most of the mappers have adjusted their maps in Russian favor. So we can see that the Russians currently are moving further from the southern part of Trudovo towards the stronghold in the southern part of Uspenovka. Furthermore, the Ukrainian sources published the video how they were counterattacking the Russian positions to the south of Gigant and Konstantinopolska, and this counterattack confirms Russian control over the territory. Currently, it's very difficult to understand based on this video whether the Ukrainians managed to restore control over the stronghold or not. One thing we know for sure, that they were attacking, and when the Ukrainians were empty, they returned back. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map as well. So this is how the map was changing during the previous 24 hours, and this is how the map was changing during the previous 72 hours. First, the Russians improved their positions along 0510 road, then the Russians entered the southern part of Trudova and get very close to the village of Konstantinopolskaya. The Ukrainian forces of the 33rd Mechanized Brigade published the video of how they were repelling another Russian attack in the direction of Dalnya. The Russians once again were using the significant number of armored vehicles, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles. Most likely the Ukrainians managed to damage some of them, but according to geolocations, one of the Ukraine FPV drone attack was geolocated exactly in this point. Based on this video, we have adjusted this map as well. So as you can see, the Russians are getting closer and closer, and most likely during the next 48-72 hours, the Russians will be able to enter the stronghold itself, and this is going to be the end for those Ukrainians that are currently located in along the Sukhie Yal River. I'm not sure that Ukrainians are going to order them to retreat because, for example, based on the Kursk direction experience, the Ukrainians didn't give order to retreat for those Ukrainians that were blocked in the forest, and now the Russians are destroying them without any resistance from their side. Now let's talk about the northern Kurakhova direction. The Russians are in active assault operation on the village of Berestki. This information was provided by both neutral mappers and pro-Ukrainian mappers. The Russians currently trying to cross the railways. The Ukrainians are holding their lines exactly along the railways. As soon as the Russians, if and when the Russians cross the railways, then most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back to the village of Stary Sterny. Also, the Russians began advancing along the railways from the village of Voznesenka. Just a small update in Russian favor that was confirmed by neutral mappers. Most likely the Russians during the day are going to continue moving further with the purpose to cut the salient and to begin the battle for the villages of Shevchenka and Stary Terny. And now let's move further and let's talk about the Chasiv Yar direction, because during the October and the first part of November, the Russians were advancing in the eastern part of Chasiv Yar, and the Russians managed to improve their position significantly, both in the city of Chasiv Yar itself and along the N32 road. But later the Ukrainians redeployed some reinforcements and reserves and began counterattacks, and as a result of several counterattacks, the Ukrainians managed to reduce the Russian foothold on the Ukrainian side of the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal. And also we have reports that the Russians began movements in the direction of the village of Orekhovo-Vasilievka, trying to outflank the village through the forest. At least this information was provided by neutral mappers, and this is the changes on the ground that were confirmed by neutral sources. Now let's talk about the Kupiansk direction. As for this territory, we haven't received anything special, just the regular activities and small changes on the ground to the south of Makeivka. The Russians, according to this report, managed to cross the Zhiribets river, and the Russians began advancing towards the next dense network of the fortifications on the Ukrainian side of the river. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.